another edition of the Bullheaded Podcast. I'm your host, per usual, Sean Tyson, here with Zoo and Peebush. How are you guys doing?
Doing well, man. Another fantasy football episode we got here today. Started doing mock drafts after Zoo's recommendations on last week's podcast. And Sean will about to announce it, but I think we're focusing on historically the most important position, but you could also argue that it's trending down as of recent years, and we've seen that with contract issues, man. That's the good old RB1 position. If you watched our podcast last year, man, you know that there became a heated argument over a certain RB1 that is now a potential top 10 running back entering this year in fantasy, man. So Kenneth Walker, the third.
Yeah, man. Not going to lie, man. On the weekends, I get a little bored. Mock draft here, mock draft there, mock draft before I go to bed, mock draft when I wake up from my bed. It's been mock draft season. I've probably done, 20, 30 mocks right now. And I did some best ball fantasy leagues, man. I just got a little of everything, consuming the content, reading the content, looking at the numbers, looking at depth charts. So I'm fully in football season, man. I might be busy with work, but I still got time to do some fantasy football due diligence because I'm back with a vengeance this year. Last year was a dud. Time to bounce back, man. Time to bounce back.
Regression to the mean, Zoo, is your favorite saying?
Oh, can't get any lower than last year. Impossible. Impossible, man.
Hey, that's my plan too, man.
You go 5-9 multiple leagues, man. Oh man, it humbles you.
Yeah, it does. Man's got to do his research.
Jeez, man. Yeah, I unlike Zoo, I have done 1.5 mock drafts. Last night I was actually doing one, but we had a huge storm come through, so it kind of just screwed that over. I think I got maybe 3 rounds into it. But I'm definitely going to start ramping it up in terms of getting those mock drafts up and ready. But, man, the running backs, like I said, every year there's a surprise. Every year there's a rookie guy that goes crazy. Every year there's a back that, some people may take 1 or 2, and they end up being like the 20th or 25th ranked back. You never know with running back. But it is, to Peebush's point, the most important part of fantasy football. So I wanted to ask the guys, like we did last week with the quarterbacks, who is trending up, who is trending down. And Peebush, I'm going to start with you.
You want me to start trending up, Sean?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, Zoo. Well, I feel like there's an obvious one, and I'm not going to say it here. I'll save that one for you. And if no one says it, then we could talk about him after. But I'm actually going to go with the guy from the NFC South, and that's a guy, Rachaad White, man. I think he could actually have a quietly good year. And there's a couple of statistics here, right? Obviously, we know the Leonard Fournette situation, right? I think he's still a free agent at this point. And we had a guy, Rachaad White is someone that, at least in dynasty leagues last year, a lot of people were eyeing him in the rookie draft. He's kind of he could be an all-down back, really good out of the backfield in the pass catching. They got Baker Mayfield coming in there, man, down there in Tampa. And one thing to know about Baker is he actually led the league last year in check down percentage. And I think that's actually that's a pretty good metric for Rachaad White, right? Because now he's pretty much the guy there. We know what he can do in the passing game, and he's playing with a quarterback that sometimes gets a little too antsy, and he just kind of flails and throws the check down in Baker Mayfield. So, I'm not saying that this guy's going to be, an RB1, but I think he could end up being a very solid flex. And if he really has major upside and ends up having a solid season, he could be an RB2 on your team. And, I don't know, Zoo, maybe you can speak to where he's going in mock drafts at this point, but I can't foresee it's anything earlier than maybe the 6th round.
He's going the 50s and 60s.
There you go. So, call it early 6th round, kind of around that point. If you're talking about a guy that could give you RB2 potential, that's pretty good value, man, especially if you want to focus, like a lot of people are this year, on the wide receiver position, especially if you're in any sort of PPR league. But this guy could have some very solid PPR value. So he's definitely a guy that I'm eyeing, maybe getting as an RB3 potentially. But, having the leverage to potentially have him as an RB2 and really create depth at that position. And in a position that has a little bit of uncertainty this year, you might have to take a chance on a guy like Rachaad White, or I'll just lead into it, Zoo, in case you were going to mention him, but Alexander Mattison, man, another guy that could be very intriguing. So, those are two guys there. I don't know if that's who you planned on talking about, Zoo, but Those are kind of the two guys that I'm eyeing right now for opening positions because their previous running backs are now free agents.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so Dalvin Cook gone, Lenny gone. Okay, the backup going to take over and get the workhorse role and hopefully get some more production because RBs, a lot of it's not about skills. A lot of it's just opportunities. If you get touches, you get volume, you get points. Like you don't have to be good at the position of football. So yeah, those guys are interesting. But I'm going with a guy that might be a 3-down back this year that people are sleeping on this year because his team is god awful.
I know who it is.
Cardinals.
Yep.
The Arizona Cardinals are terrible. Kyler Murray, obviously injury, so the QB position's a little suspect. But James Conner last year quietly had a really productive game.
Yes, he did.
Like James Conner, like we always think of this guy as a big boulder that just runs straight. Like he's like the ground and pound guy, but he got some receiving yards last year. Like they got 58 targets, over 300 receiving yards last year. We already know this guy's an end zone machine. Like I swear to God, every time the brother in the red zone, end zone, like he gets in. The year before, he had the all-time year, 15 touchdowns. It was absurd. Like that year, James Conner was absurd. And last year, he got a little nicked up, missed a couple of games, but still had 7 touchdowns, 780 rushing yards, so over 1,100 total scrimmage yards. And you're able to get this guy in the 60s right now? That's what you'll be able to get. James Conner in the 60s. And this is a guy you can start at your flex. I might even say start at the RB2 if you go a little wide receiver early, maybe wide receiver, running back. Like, it might be your RB2. This guy, you could start, and he's going to get volume. He is high usage. He's had high-end seasons. Obviously, we all remember James Conner from the Le'Veon Bell season when that brother took the year off, and James Conner went in and was RB1 material.
Yep.
And on the Arizona Cardinals, he's been very, very productive. Especially, like, there's no Chase Edmonds. Like, a lot of the backs there, like, I don't even know who the backup running back is. So this guy's going to get volume, and my goodness, the value for James Conner this year, man, I'll love it, man. I'll absolutely love James Conner in the later rounds, and actually in the mid rounds this year. So James Conner's my guy.
Yeah, he's kind of, I would maybe not put him in the same situation, but Miles Sanders is another guy that is on a very crappy team with a young quarterback, and they might rely on him for really a 3-down, kind of running back. I mean, Sean, you're from the Carolinas, man. I'm sure you're hearing a decent amount of Panther news, right? Obviously, mostly about Bryce, but Miles Sanders was a great pickup for them, especially with McCaffrey leaving last year, kind of left a huge hole. Obviously, we know what Deontay Foreman did there. And if a guy like Deontay Foreman, even though he was scoring a lot of red zone touchdowns, Miles Sanders is a legitimate running back, and we saw what he did, granted, behind the best offensive line in Philadelphia last year. So maybe he'll drop down a little bit, but I think on such a bad team, they're going to have to use their most talented players, like James Conner for the Cardinals, Miles Sanders for the Panthers. So that's a good pick, Zoo. I had James Conner, man, last year. Man, he saved me a couple games.
Yeah, he's definitely a really good option. The only thing that scares me is, I guess Kyler maybe comes about week 6, 7, 8, maybe. Yep. I'm not sure. But if their backup, who I guess is Colt McCoy, I don't even know who their backup is. But if he's god awful, then you're just going to put 8 or 9 in the box, and Conner may not be able to do what he wants to do. Yeah. But if Colt is serviceable, then yeah, I think Conner, especially with TDs around the goal line, he could be nice. The Mattison one, I think, is a really good one. Another guy I thought of, James Cook, just off of Nyheim Hines getting hurt. Singletary is not there no more. I'm wondering if, they finally use him. Offensive coordinator is, but I wonder if they're like, okay, maybe this means Josh Allen needs to throw more, which I hope they don't, because Cook can catch out of the backfield, and I think because he was a second-round pick the year before, since he was an investment, you might as well see if he can play or not, and the genes are there because look at his brother. I'm just wondering because of his build, is he a 3-down back? Yeah, I don't know if he can be a 3-down between the tackles type of guy, so that then limits it to a 3rd-down back, and I mean, he would be a nice flex, but in terms of being, potential maybe RB2, I don't know if that could get there. But he's interesting because he is explosive and can catch out of the backfield. And maybe he's gotten, more of a, true running back build. So that's a guy that I was looking at trending up. But what are some of you guys is trending down? Go ahead.
Interesting. Since you mentioned James Cook, man, Damian Harris. Very, very interesting. Like, he's on the Buffalo Bills now as the backup running back, but he's more like the bruiser type, right? The first 2-down back, like, Like he's in that role. While Cook is more like the stereotypical pass catching back, and that guy is going extremely late. Like might be undrafted in certain leagues. Like he's going the 120s. Like you're getting this dude for free, and you're getting this guy on an elite offense. Like I just love guys on elite offenses. So more touchdown opportunities, man. So like more end zone, like more high value touches for this guy. So that guy's a nice little guy that you get in the later rounds and get the. He might be the highest scoring running back for a good offensive team in the Buffalo Bills. So depending on, obviously Josh Allen's going to be stealing a bunch of touchdowns because that dude's a rushing machine. But
he's a bowling ball.
Could get in there and get some end zone tutties too, man. He might be an interesting play. As
you know what? It kind of reminds me a bit of what Deontay Foreman did last year, Zoo. Just kind of filled in for bruising at the 1 yard line. He's going to score 3 touchdowns, and then he has one breakout run, and he puts him at like a 25-piece game, right? But most of the time, he'll probably give you just a solid like 40 yards and a touchdown. Good guy to have on your bench. Could package him up for a trade potentially if he ends up taking over. Because to your point, James Cook could get injured if they do try and use him in a 3-down situation. And we know how the weather turns out in Buffalo. They need guys that they can hand the ball when it's snowing in November and December and into January, right? Because we know this team is legit. They haven't changed much. The only thing that consistently changes with the Buffalo Bills is who they have in the backfield, but they just can't figure it out. So maybe this is the year for it.
Let me ask y'all a question. I didn't put this as trending down, but I just thought of it because I don't know why. We're just talking about backup running backs and running backs now. Is there any chance Joe Mixon becomes a trending down? Just because of all the hype with Chase Brown. I keep hearing so much hype with him. And they didn't want to pay Joe. They didn't want to pay Joe Mixon either. They did not want to pay him. So I'm thinking
he took a major pay cut. And last year, like he had an all right year. Like a lot of it was skewed by that one game where
4 or 5 touchdowns.
He had like 50 points on game. So obviously that brings up the average. So if you take that out, like he had a pretty, I would say, below average Joe Mixon season.
Yeah.
But his backup running back, man. He's in Denver Broncos right now, man. He's on Denver Broncos, and the guy's pretty good.
Come on, P-Ron.
Yeah, Samaji. Samaji's on the Denver Broncos right now. So
might be because of Chase Brown. They're like, get out of here. We got Chase Brown.
Yeah.
Like, he's from Illinois. I mean, I know maybe Illinois and Indiana has a rival or border rival. I don't know, but
not in football. Nobody cares about either football team, sadly. But I do think to your point, I don't know if he'll end up like stealing carries from Mixon. Maybe he'll get playing time like P. Ryan did. But man, when Joe Mixon was healthy, I mean, he's clearly the number one there. Oh, yeah. They trust him. He's been in the franchise for his entire career. It's if you're taking Mixon, I think it's a good handcuff to take Chase Brown. That's a great way to put it.
Yeah. Okay. I just love RBs with high usage on good offenses. And that's why on a Joe Burrow led offense, you're going to be in the red zone a lot. And then you just get a couple of tutties. Oh man, yeah, that's how you get value. So Joe Mixon last year was consensus second round pick, early second round, mid second round pick. This year, more of a third round pick. So that's the value right there that you're getting this year. So you're getting 1 round of value, and a lot of people fading him because I don't know, based on age, his contract maybe hit the wall at that old age right now. He's getting like 26, 27. So he's getting up there in age, which is a legitimate factor especially for running backs, which I totally get. But I'm all about winning championships, so I'm going for the risk, baby, man. Joe Mixon, baby. Welcome to the squad, man. I'll take you in the 3rd round on all my teams.
So who are some trending? Because I just thought of the Mixon one, but like I couldn't really think of any like legit trending downs.
I got one for you
unless it was an injury, but
personal experience with this man right here, man.
I think I know
with the same division.
I know
Alvin
exactly
Kamara, man, trending down.
Yeah,
and look, like. I had him last year on my dynasty team. I didn't give him a contract, so I don't have him this year. He was getting, the thing is, when he's playing, they use him a lot, right? And he's a great pass catching back. We know what he can do, but he just was not scoring touchdowns at all. Now, granted, their offense was atrocious. They couldn't stay healthy pretty much across the board. The only reason they were relevant was their defense is always, kind of keeping them in games. But you're looking at a guy that was a consensus probably – correct me if I'm wrong here, probably a top 5 back for a couple of years there.
Oh, yeah, he was elite.
PPR was ridiculous. But his yards per touch, not just per carry, but per touch, dropped over around a yard and a half in the past 2 years, from 6.2 that he held for 5 years in his career. And in the last 2, it's dropped down to 4.8. Add on top of that, the whole suspension conundrum that's going on and issues. I mean, I just think this is a guy that, unless he completely plummets in the draft and he's available in like, I don't know, like the 7th round, kind of around like where, Rashad White's going or James Conner's going, maybe take a risk on him, just because it is going to be interesting to see what Derek Carr does. But at the same time, man, I just have personal experience with him. I think he is trending downwards, kind of in that Najee Harris territory. I wouldn't say that I have as much worry about Derrick Henry, but I do think he's also potentially a trending down. I just think those kind of 3 running backs there for the, prior studs, especially Najee, he had an unbelievable first couple of years and then just really kind of fell off last year. It's just kind of that tier of running backs that I think you really got to stop and think about this year in the draft.
Yeah, for me, man, I might say something blasphemous, man. He's been fantasy football royalty for the last couple of years. Won people leagues, man. But I personally don't see myself personally drafting this guy because his price is extremely high, well worth it based on the previous years, man. My man Austin Eckler, man. Austin Eckler.
Wow.
I'm telling you this. Austin Eckler has been a PPR machine, touchdown machine. Like, the guy's just been, and he likes fantasy football. So he cares about numbers.
He's like, I want to win for people.
Exactly. So he has that value in his head that other football players, a lot of people just don't care about fantasy football. So I like the dude a lot. But when I see this brother go in the top 5 pick, he's going number 2, number 3, number 4, man. I'm just like, man, I can't take a brother that old as a running back, man. He's at that 27, 28 age right now. And this is when it gets real scary. Because when you hit that 27, 28 age, that's when your production just plummets. Plummets as a fantasy running back. So, if this guy ain't a bruiser, he's going to have to be getting end zone, red zone touchdowns, high usage in the end zone, pass catching touchdowns. He's going to have to be going everywhere. He's ain't that traditional running back, so he's going to be, his usage is going to be out of craziness. I feel like he's a very high injury risk this year for Mr. Eckler. That's what I feel about this guy this year. So first rounder, I can't do it. A second round pick, I'll take him. But first rounder, I can't do it with my man Eckler. So I'm not going to be able to get him in any of my drafts this year. So obviously I'm not fading him completely, but I am fading him around this year in fantasy football, Mr. Eckler.
So you think of him like RB2 more?
No, I think out of the top 10, I see him in the 8 to 10. I need a high upside. I need a top 5 guy. That's what Dalvin Cook did to me last year. Dalvin Cook was technically still an RB1, but he was that 9, 10-ish. And that wasn't getting it done. That was just losing me leagues. So I need elite production in my first round pick right now. So I'm a little.
So would you rather have Nick Chubb over Eckler?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well,
Chubb, man.
Well, I got questions because we did questions for QBs in terms of who would you rather have. And I have 2 this week. So according to this ESPN ranking, I thought I switched it up because I had CBS last week. These backs are ranked 3 and 4. So out of Saquon or Bijan, who would you draft as your RB1?
Bijan. And the reason is I was reading reports because in my dynasty league right now, obviously Herbert's my number 1 quarterback, but I did draft Desmond Ridder last year in second round of my rookie draft. And I'm not saying that I immediately saw him becoming a stud, but apparently he's having a big struggle throwing the ball down the field with accuracy to, a Drake London or a Kyle Pitts. And that just shows me that I think he could end up being a solid, he could end up being, and I think we talked about this, one of those rushing quarterbacks that just doesn't have time in the pocket, can't really throw the ball that well. And so he just relies on his legs to kind of get out of plays. But I think that also opens the door to a lot of checkdowns. And we know what Bijan can do in the receiving game, and also just relying on him in the rushing attack. I mean, we saw what some, I don't want to say no-name guys, but, with the Falcons, we've seen Devontae Freeman. You probably remember that name, Zoo, way back.
He got paid.
Kind of come up, and he got paid. Cordero Patterson coming in and revitalizing his career really in the Falcons.
I forgot about that.
And having an unbelievable run there with them for a year and a half. And then Algier comes in and actually has a pretty productive time at the running back position. And it's not like their offensive line has been top 10 in the league. I think just the scheme that they have, you do have to respect those two weapons in Pitts and Drake London. So it's not like you can just leave them wide open, because I think Ritter can make that throw. But it's just kind of the contested ones down the field where I think he'll end up probably playing the safer route to kind of try and keep his job, right? And I think that's where Bijan comes into play. But you could also argue the same thing about Daniel Jones. That was the expectation with Daniel Jones and Saquon Barkley. So I'd probably lean towards Bijan, but it's Saquon Barkley, man. So I think there's just a little bit more risk there.
Yeah, dude. Not gonna lie, this might be this decision right now. A lot of fantasy owners might face in the draft because those guys are neck and neck, right next to each other. And obviously, if you're looking at running backs, those are two of the premium ones right now. So I'm like Saquon Barkley, contract year pretty much. He got his extra $1 million, but he's on a 1-year deal. So he has all the incentive in the world to ball out to try to get that guaranteed contract over consecutive seasons. Obviously, remember his injury season that derailed him. But last year, he bounced back. And I feel like Saquon Barkley, man, his usage, like, he's one of the rare 3-down backs that's left. Like, there's not many 3-down backs left. And obviously, with this atrocious offense, like, obviously, they got a little passing threat in Darren Waller. But they use Saquon in the passing game a lot, too. Like, Daniel Jones, one of his favorite targets, Saquon Barkley, a little dink and dunk, man. A little cheap little five yards and catching that reception right there. So Saquon Barkley, I love this man. He was on my team last year. One of my better calls last year, believing in Saquon when the brothers go in the 3rd round. He's got no more value left. Like, he's fully priced up as a 1st-round pick now. So that's the thing. When you draft this guy, he better hit or your team's over. So, like, the thing with Saquon is he's only injury risk. Like, his skill set, his usage, no risk at all. So I love Saquon, but Bijan Robinson too, man. Oh,
the upside.
Rookie running backs are beautiful. When you spend that draft capital on a rookie running backs historically, like, you just get an absolute stud. Like, off the top of my head, you got Ezekiel Elliott, Saquon Barkley, like these guys in their
Adrian
first
Peterson
year,
way back, yeah.
Like even the guy that sucked, Trent Richardson. Remember Trent Richardson?
Oh, Trent Richardson on the Browns, man.
Yeah, even that guy sucked, but he also had a good year. So when you get a 1st-round value like running back,
Jonathan Taylor.
John Taylor was 2nd round.
Oh, you're right.
Yeah, so for a 1st round, it's an exclusive club, and they say this guy's the best prospect since Saquon Barkley. That is some high praise. He's using the passing game, man. So like Bijan is younger, so obviously less wear and tear on the body. So you're assuming less injury risk. This is a tough decision, man. This is an extremely tough decision.
There, Sean.
And if I'm thinking a draft, man, it's 50-50 in my head, man. But if I'm at the buzzer, I'm going to go with the younger guy. I'm going to go with the younger guy.
Bijan.
But I might regret it. I might regret it because that Atlanta offense, who knows? Like, I've seen the Giants be average.
They beat the Vikings.
Like they were pretty. Yeah, they beat the Vikings. A little cute little story, but like Bijan Robinson, like Atlanta, like we don't know how that's gonna look, and we don't know this coach. This coach is a little suspect. Like obviously,
he does like to run the ball, though.
He does like to run the ball. But all I gotta say is Kyle Pitts, 1st-round pick, tight end, a little different position. You expect usage on your rookies. 2nd year, guy was just out there. Not really doing much, and you spend a top 10 pick at a tight end that was said one of the greatest tight end prospects of all time. So who knows with this guy? He looks like Tyler. The thing is, Tyler Algier rushed for 1,000 yards. So like, brother Bijan could do the same thing. So
I think receiving is a bit different too, because you can just hand the ball off to a running back and they kind of do their thing. Whereas Kyle Pitts, he had Marcus Mariota throwing to him, man. I'm not saying that.
And now he has Ritter.
Yeah, and now he's got Desmond Ritter. So, am I touching Kyle Pitts this year? Maybe as a last.
Probably not.
I'd probably rather take a Hawkinson over him, right?
Or a rookie tight end,
Or a rookie tight, Kincaid. We were talking about him pre-production, right? Not saying to spend it at the same time that you would draft Kyle Pitts, but maybe hold out for somebody different and don't spend that 6th or 7th round pick on a guy like we were talking about earlier, like a James Conner or Rashad White. So I totally agree with you, Zoo. But I do think that running backs, you can place a little bit more on them because they're shorter throws or they're just immediately getting the ball handed to them. So, you're not relying as much.
All right. So the second one I had, which is the last one, this is more of a flex fringe RB2 if these guys totally hit. And their respective rankings is 18th and 14th. So I guess I'll let you guys figure that out. But it's between a guy we mentioned earlier, Alexander Mattison, or Jahmyr Gibbs. Who would you take? PPR. There's like your flex, and if they both hit, they're probably an RB2.
I'm going with the rookie again, man. I'm going with the rookie again.
See,
even though he's sharing.
The thing with Jahmyr Gibbs is Detroit Lions elite. They're going to have an elite offense this year, I think, based on what I've seen from last year. And obviously, Jared Goff and like Amon-Ra, they have the thing going. So the offense can be moving. First round value running back. Same story with Bijan. Same story with this guy. But thing with Gibbs, you could get a Gibbs and a David Montgomery later on. So you could get a handcuff, a guy, and he's also usable. Because David Montgomery, he's low-key been pretty productive for the Chicago Bears the last couple of years.
About time you admitted it.
Yeah, like I hate the most sexy name. Like you drive David Montgomery, you're like it's David Montgomery. But this guy's been actually 1 year was an RB1 top 10 running back, and last year had a little off year, not as good, but still like his usage wise like pretty good. So he's in that bruiser role, and he has some pass catching ability. So Jahmyr Gibbs, if you get him, he might be off to a slow start. Because rookies, you never know. Rookies,
ATN and James Robinson-esque.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, you use the guy that's all reliable, even because David Montgomery also has pass catching ability. He ain't one-dimensional. So you get a Gibbs and you get a Montgomery a couple rounds later. That's the thing. You get David Montgomery like 3 rounds, maybe 4 rounds later in like the 80s, and you get Gibbs in like the 30s, 40s. That's a nice little pair right there. So right now, so I like the ability to handcuff Gibbs with a slow start in the beginning, and hopefully at the end of the season, he takes over the role, becomes the go-to guy, and helps you.
Kind of like playoffs. What's the dude? Wasn't it like a Michael Carter Jets, and then Breece Hall?
Breece Hall.
I mean, yeah, and when Breece Hall kind of just took over, I guess week 5 or 6, I think. Yeah, kind of maybe something similar to that.
See, that's why I'm going the other way though, Zoo, because I do agree. I think the value there for the handcuff is there. But, man, I was in that position last year having ATN and James Robinson, and you kind of hit that point where you don't know which one to start. There's that, like, in-between where they're kind of transitioning, and those are some crucial games in, like, weeks, like, 6 through 9, 6 through 10, where the team is clearly figuring out what's their best way to win, but you're basing it purely on just that one player's production that you're putting in the starting lineup, but it's not worth it to play both of them, right? So it's like, one of the guys is going to give you 16 points. The other guy's only going to have 6 in that game. And then the next week it could flip, right? It really just depends who's getting the goal line touches, who's getting more check down passes thrown to them. So to be honest, I'm going to go with Alexander Mattison on that prompt because I think with the addition of Jordan Addison on the Vikings, and then they obviously have Hawkinson, teams are going to be absolutely petrified in the secondary to try and cover all these weapons that Kirk Cousins has. And I think we've seen what Mattison can do out of the backfield. He's much better pass catching back than Dalvin Cook was. We still know that he can bruise. I mean, he had multiple 100-plus yard scrimmage games when he gets playing time, which was enough to see that this guy is, they were willing to let Dalvin Cook go and make this guy the RB1. So I'm probably going to go with Mattison in that specific prompt. But I do think, to Zoo's point, that Jahmyr Gibbs could end up being the number 1 back. And if you have him come playoff time and he's kind of taking over, let's say 80% of the major touches, 75%, 80%, he can end up winning you a league as a flex or an RB2 potentially.
Yeah, that's what the enticing.
It's just if you want a more consistent start to your season to get off on a roll, I would probably pick Mattison. But if you already are stacked at the running back, like let's say you do pick, a running, like you get Bijan or something like that at number 5. Right. And then you flip round 2 and then maybe you get like an Aaron Jones. And then in round you pick a wideout and in round 4 you take Jahmyr Gibbs. I would probably do it if that was if that was kind of my order in which I'm going and he falls to that point, because I do think people are going to hesitate because of the split backfield, because Montgomery is proven and Gibbs isn't. Right. So we know what Montgomery can do. I'm not saying that people would flip and say, I'm taking Montgomery first, because obviously Gibbs is a first-round draft pick. But that's another tough one, man. That is difficult. I just think Mattison could end up being a top 12 back this year with that.
See, they had this, and this was, I think, Draft Pros. I don't think this was ESPN, but they had Gibbs at 14 and Mattison at 18. And I think they're just thinking of, and I'm guessing this is how all the projections go, but like if they both hit at their apex, they're thinking Gibbs will be more explosive because I guess he's more pass catcher. He's more, explosive. I don't know. But the Gibbs thing is super like enticing because, man, I just think if he does hit and there's more opportunities, I feel like, for him. I think they're going to be like, okay, Gibbs, like, this is your team. Like, come on. We drafted you at 12 or 13, whatever. We want you to be better. Like, but with Mattison, he's definitely going to get way more volume. And there's one guy I just thought of before we switch into our NFC North conversation. I'm not quitting this narcotic just because I invested so much in him last year. But Swift intrigues me late. He really intrigues me because I don't think he can get beat out by any of the guys that's there. And to Zoo's point about, like, if Jalen Hurts is that guy as a quarterback, they're going to be in the red zone a lot, and maybe he just gets those type of touchdowns. But I don't know where I would draft him at, and he would definitely be just a flex.
I'm scarred, man. But if he
Me
falls,
too, but God, I can't quit that. I can't quit it because
I do like that. I do like guys that go really early and then sucks it up, and then next year he regresses. His ADP goes real late.
Debo and D Swift.
Oh yeah, Debo go low 40s, but D Swift in the 80s to 100s. So he's very very late. And the thing is, Miles Sanders in that offense very successful. So obviously you get a D Swift. Obviously they also signed Rashad Penny. So they might be in a Band-Aid. Splitting carries, probably 50-50. Yeah. So you get both the Eagles running backs late and see who hits. So that's all. Like, I do like DeAndre Swift's talent because based on touches, like every time he touches the ball, he's pretty efficient.
He just gets tackled at the 1 yard line, Zoo.
Oh God,
man, that was scarring.
Started, bro.
What was that one shot? I think it was Thanksgiving last year, man, where he just kept getting tackled at the 1 yard line. I think Zoo.
Here comes Jamal Williams.
Oh my God, he got injured that 1 year.
Yeah, and I traded him to you, man.
What a heist that was.
Oh, yeah, it still turned out bad for both of us. So it was a lose-lose.
No, it was a lose-lose. We traded a bunch of bums.
Yeah, tough year, man.
Well, speaking of NFC North, a former NFC North player,